Disclaimer: the insights and opinions shared on this show are for educational and entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, we recommend consulting with a qualified professional to better understand your unique financial situation. Welcome to the Investors Playbook Show, where our mission is clear: empowerment through financial education. We firmly believe that financial freedom isn't a privilege, it's a right that's available to everybody. Each week, we dive deep into the world of finances, breaking down complex topics and making them accessible and actionable for everyone. As we grow this community, we invite you to join us on this journey. Why tune in? Because together, we're not just learning about wealth, we're building a movement, reshaping futures, and proving that with the right knowledge, financial success is within everyone's reach. It's time to get off the sidelines. Let's go.
Welcome to Investors Playbook, episode 37. I'm Cornell Rowan.
I'm Deshaun Edwards, and we have an amazing guest with us today, Dr. Rumbi, who is the co-founder and current CEO of I Am Willing. She and her co-founder perform legacy planning. That is what I Am Willing is all about. And we brought her here today because at Investors Playbook, we definitely take legacy planning very seriously. We know that it's not just about finances, it's also about making sure that the mindset is passed down generation to generation. So we definitely wanted to bring Dr. Rumbi on. She's here to drop some gems. It's going to be a super exciting episode. I'm excited to hear some of the gems that you're going to drop. But yeah, thank you again, Dr. Rumbi, for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you
you.
for having me.
Of course. So we are going to just jump right into it. You are the co-founder of I Am Willing, and I just kind of want to just like to level set. Can you explain like legacy planning, and just the importance of legacy planning?
Yeah. So legacy planning, I like to reshape it, redefine it, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions and kind of heaviness around it. Very simply, I describe legacy planning as being able to share your wishes and share your wealth with those who matter the most to you. Kind of
Yes.
simple, elegant, who doesn't want to share their wishes about how they want to be remembered and celebrated? And who doesn't want to pass on their wealth, right? All those things you've worked hard for, whether it's financial or, or otherwise. I think we all want to share those things with our family. We all want our families generally to know what we want. And that's what legacy planning is. And there's lots of ways to do it. And so that's what I help people navigate.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Um, I'll ask this additional question, and Cornell, you could take the next one. Just hearing you talk, right? I'm hearing the passion behind it, but more specifically, what inspired you to kind of get into legacy planning? What was
Yeah.
your spark or your fire that made you kind of want to say, "This is what I want to do"?
Oh, so something like this, maybe it's not surprising, didn't come from like a really happy place. So in 2020, in December, my sister lost her sister-in-law and her father-in-law on the same day, a week before Christmas. And as some Black folks might know, when her father-in-law died that evening, people said right away it was of a broken heart because his baby girl had died, that morning. And so I was very close to them. My sister's much older than me, and she was married when I was 5. So these are people that I've known, basically my whole life. And my sister was calling me in the days and weeks after, can you look this up? Can you Google this? Right? I'm the researcher in the family. Like, we don't know where he banked. Like, how can we figure that out? Or, we just came across this box of Jet and Essence magazines. Like, can you find a local appraiser, to come by and right assess all this stuff? The questions were just so like all over the place. Even the memorial service. She didn't have a will, he didn't have a will, so there were questions around, did she want to be buried? Did she want to be cremated? And it's like, well, who has the money for that? Who's gonna, pay for that? Um, and after about a year of that, mind you, it's still not resolved. It's been 4 years later. Um, I thought there's got to be a better way. Why do we have all these questions? Why don't we know what they wanted? I like not having a will was shocking to me. And so that's the place that I started. And that's when I discovered that 70% of Americans don't have a will. And I was like blown away by that. It's about the same in every community. And I can get to that, a bit later, that it's just one of these things in the US context that no one seems to do. Um, so talking to my sister through this a year later, I was asking, well, didn't you take him to get to get a will or work with a lawyer? And she's like, we did. And he just left it on the desk and he was 80.
Hmm.
And I said, what about, my sister aunt? And she was like, she was in her 40s. She had two kids, a minor and an adult. Never occurred to her, to do it, even though she had some serious health problems. So I did another year of kind of researching this topic. And when I realized that very few people have it, it's really hard for people to do. I was like, okay, there's got to be something that I can do about this. And the journey has changed year over year, like what I think that thing is, because every time I talk to people, I discover, oh, that's not helping you take the next step. Okay, let me try this. Oh, that's not quite it. Let me try this. So I'm in year 3, and this year I'm really focusing on coaching and education. So having conversations like this and getting the word out, getting people just to have it in the back of their mind so that when they're ready to take that step, they know they can reach out to people like me and others, in the community to do that. But I've tried a lot of different things, and it's just not an easy thing to solve. I mean, those are the kind of problems I like the most, but it's a people challenge. It's not about process. We have plenty of DIY wills and templates and things. It's not about purpose because I think people know that this is something they need to do. Um, it's really about people. It's just about us kind of getting over some of the fears and hangups we have to take these steps.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize something that you pointed out
Hmm.
because you were saying that when someone passed away, there were just a lot of questions. And what people had, and I don't think people take into account like the mindset that you're in when someone near you passes away. So
Yes.
you're having to make all these decisions while grieving
Yeah.
Hmm.
whoever this loved one is. So it's a lot. You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So whatever you can take from your love, whatever pressures, whatever weight you can take from your loved ones in that time, it's just good to have that. You never know when you're gonna pass. So it's good to know, it's good for them to know what all you want at your wishes. Basically, you're
Yeah.
passing down your wishes, as you said earlier. And
Yeah. That's
also
great.
And also, I just wanted to say that it's really dope that you were talking about that your vision is evolving. I think that that's amazing also because it's not like you're just okay. I decided that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it no matter what if it's working or not. You see what I'm saying? You're going in. You're doing these services for people. You're seeing what they need. And it's like, hey, I might need to tweak my vision a little bit for the people. You see what I'm saying? Because this is what they need. So in order to improve my services to my clients, this is what the business needs to become. So just respect to you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you're totally right about the questions. I call it trauma and drama. We're leaving trauma and drama instead of leaving wishes and wealth. And it doesn't have to be that way. And you're absolutely right. When you were trying to figure out what to do because right you've been left no instructions, it's anxiety inducing. I mean, watching my sister and her husband go through this was so painful because we didn't have the most basic questions answered. On top of that, your family is going to have a bunch of opinions that they can't back up with money or with information, right? So everyone is going to be in your face about do this, do this, do that. And at the end of the day, everyone is just guessing. Everyone is just doing the best that they can,
Yeah.
because people didn't have those conversations.
Yeah. Something you
Right.
just said just now, and I was thinking about this too. Trauma and drama is definitely part of it. When someone passes away, you don't know what their wishes are, but you just mentioned the amount of money that it could possibly cost them, right? So,
Yeah.
say someone does have a home and they did not dictate where that home's going to go. Now they have to figure out how to fight for that home. It's not even just making a decision. Now it's trying to make sure that, the man doesn't grab whatever it was that wasn't allocated. You have to pay for lawyers. It becomes more expensive than just, paying for your loved one, proper burial or funeral. It starts to be now you have to get into all these legal battles because
Yeah.
things weren't properly documented, things weren't properly written down. So yeah, trauma and drama. I really like that. Like I really like that a lot. Like don't leave trauma and drama. Instead, leave wishes and wealth. I think
And,
that's gonna be like one of the highlights of the episode for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
and she also said something else that's going to lead to the next question. But I just want to say, you made a great point that you didn't want, any property to go to the man, right? But
Mhm.
also, it's family fighting against
Yeah,
each other.
that too. They
Yeah.
will
It's
fight.
like people come out the woodwork, people
Yeah.
that didn't help them when they were ill and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Oh, I'm entitled to this also." You
Mhm.
see
Mm.
what I'm saying? So that's also a big thing. But you said something earlier. You said 75% of was it black
70%, I
That
think.
70% of all Americans, any
70% of all
race, yeah,
Americans.
all Americans do not have a will.
Okay,
It's a little bit better in the Black community. I've seen between like 65 don't have a will, 65% don't have a will.
okay,
But,
okay. That's what it
you know,
was.
yeah, but the numbers still aren't great.
So
And yeah.
so why do you think that 70%
Mm.
of Americans have not created a will? Why do you think that is?
Okay, I got a couple theories. So, I mean, there's some evidence out there. I mean, there's some studies, some surveys. Number one is fear, and fear can look like a lot of different things, right? Fear of death. It can be superstition, taboo. It can be based in your culture. Um, it can be fear of kind of putting something down on paper. Um, Expense. People tend to think that this costs money. The other side of expense is thinking that they don't have enough, right? Oh, I don't have a house, I don't have a car, I don't have anything to pass on. What difference does it make? Like, my family will work it out, right? And I say, look, if you don't have a plan, the state has a plan for you. And how many times do we look up and we're like, oh, the government had a really great plan for me? Like, rarely, right? Do we think that the government's plan is the plan that we want? Um, so I'd say fear, money, and then a lack of education, a lack of understanding. Like, where do I start? What do I do? How involved does this need to be? Who should I talk to? There's a lot of questions. Overall, I think in the US context, we also live in a death denying culture. So we don't talk about death. We don't, go to funerals very often, right? I know people who've never been to a funeral, right? Who've never looked into a casket. We also have a tendency to separate ourselves from old age, as part of that death denying culture. So it's a little bit better in the Black community, because I just think we're just more community centered than some other groups. But there's some people who have never been in a room when someone has passed away or been nearby or taken care of someone right at the end of life. So we just don't think about it. It's just not part of our everyday existence. And so we can keep putting it off, right? Oh, it's not going to happen to me, or it's not going to happen to me tomorrow. I'll be fine. So I think for all of those reasons combined is why we see that no American, or very few Americans, I should say, regardless of race, class, education, income, do this work. I think it's all of those things combined because we know that in the US, so many things segregate along race, right? And income and class and status. But this is one of the few things, maybe the only thing that I'm aware of, that doesn't matter who you are, how much you know, what you do. We have doctors, celebrities, poor people, rich people, right? Like nobody is doing it. Nobody is talking about it. It's just not happening.
Man,
Uh,
I think that answers it, bro.
there's definitely, but there's something like you said, the don't have enough part,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like we all know people with like a negative network, right?
Yeah.
So like we're when writing a will with no assets,
Hmm.
what does that look like?
Okay. So I like to take it a step back. So let me preface by saying I'm not a lawyer, right? And so my advice starts in the steps that you need to take as you get to the point of writing a will. I want everyone to have a will for sure. And some people even need to have a trust, right? In more complicated structures. But the fact that 70% of us never even get to the point of a will, what that is telling me is that there are smaller steps that people need to take in order to feel confident and empowered and educated to write a will. And so if I'm talking to someone that has, zero net worth or very few assets, it doesn't matter. They could have $1 million because what I'm doing is starting with the conversation. And I'm starting with questions like, how do you want to be remembered and celebrated? Who do you need to talk to in your family about what you want? What are some memories or stories or history or ideas, right, that you hold that you want to need, that you want to pass on or that you need to write down, and record? Do you have heirlooms in your house, or not even heirlooms? Do you have gifts? Do you have jewelry that your niece or your nephew, right, is going to want? Do you have a kick-ass Jordan collection that you know that your best friend, right, is going to want if you're gone? Or maybe you just need to make a note, hey, don't take this to Goodwill, right? This is worth, $5,000, like whatever it is. So once you get people thinking about the totality of their lives and what they love and what they want to share and what they want to experience, assets are just a small part of that. Assets are what allow the next generation to fulfill their wishes. But when someone is gone, they want to know that they got that favorite piece of jewelry, right? Or they want to know that they got that photo album with people's names in it, right? They want things to remember you by and to celebrate, your life. So the money, yes, that's icing on the cake, right? Because then the next generation gets to do what they need to do. But I think we miss the mark a little bit when we forget about all these other things, especially in the Black community. Because if we're trending towards zero wealth, which I know we're going to talk about because the passing on the money is important. But if we're trending towards zero wealth, like I don't want that to only be the story, or to just be the main part of the story. Like, yes, we need to work on that, and legacy planning will help us, I think, not trend in that direction, frankly. How can we build wealth if we're not passing on wealth? But I don't want us to forget the cultural wealth that we also need to capture.
That I mean, that is exactly kind of where I was going to lead, like the next
Yeah.
question, right? Um, Similar to what Cornell just asked you, with every individual having a different, let's just say worth or, um, net worth or different assets. I am willing specifically, right? And you kind of answered it a bit. You said that you kind of have that conversation first, right? And go through each one. Um, yeah, so for individuals, is that sort of the process? And then I guess what are the next steps
Yeah.
in that process, right? When it comes to your business specifically helping someone with legacy planning.
Yeah. So the framework that I've been working on now for about a year is three steps. So starting with the conversation, like I described, right? Because again, we're not used to talking about end of life or legacy planning. So really just getting someone comfortable, warmed up. Maybe you start with your partner or your friend, right? Bring people into the room. Or maybe I'm coaching you about how to talk to your partner or talk to your parents or grandparents, right? About this. I'm asking you these big questions because I want someone to leave that conversation feeling like, yes, I am enough. I do have things, right, that I want to pass on. I do have wealth, financial wealth, cultural wealth that I want to pass on. And I do want my family to avoid the trauma and drama, right, and know how I want to be celebrated. So that's step one. And then step two is redefining your wealth. So we kind of go back to that idea of financial assets are not your only metric for wealth. So I encourage people to make a list. Yes, list where you bank. It's that simple. I don't need to know how much is in your bank, but someone does need to know where you bank and where you hold your assets. You'd be surprised how many people pass away and the family's like, I don't know where they bank, or I don't know who holds their life insurance policy. So there's just money sitting out there that no one, right? Not only can you not access it because they probably didn't leave a beneficiary, which I'll get to in a minute, but you don't even know where it is to take that initial step, right? You're literally at the mailbox waiting for mail to come in. This is what happened in my family, to see where they banked, right? Or who cut their lawn, or what is on auto pay, right? So you can cancel these things. So step two is capturing your wealth. So capturing the financial institutions, that you're with, where you bank, um, anything that's like on auto pay that we take for granted, kind of your subscriptions, things like that need to be canceled. But then we also get to capture your cultural and historical wealth, and that's where I get excited. So it's those things that I mentioned earlier, right? Those things that you want to pass on, those things that you need to tell your family, like, hey, this is sentimental to me, but it's not worth anything, right? You can send this to Goodwill, right? Or I want you to let my best friend go through my clothes when I'm gone. Or I want this sneaker collection, right, to go to this person, or this furniture, whatever. You just kind of take stock of everything in your house. Something that I did with one client was talk to her about her photo album. She has 2 adult children. And I said, are all of your photos labeled? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, do your daughters know who everyone is in those photos? And she's like, no, I don't think so. I was like, maybe you can take some time with them or by yourself to just label the photos and say, this is your great aunt so and so. She's the brother of so and so, right? Those are things that just get lost and get missed, when someone's gone. So there's just a lot of creative things that people can do around the cultural and historical wealth, recording recipes, recording videos, taking pictures of things, noting things down. And then you realize, wow, how much wealth, you really have. And then step three, and I'll just say it briefly, we can come back to it, is naming your beneficiaries. And that's the only kind of technical piece that I have. And the reason I have it as part of this process is because, again, 70% of people don't name beneficiaries in their accounts. The data is a little old, but I have no reason to believe that it's any better. But beneficiary accounts are those accounts that will get passed on to the person without going to probate, without going to court. They're transferable on death. So this is your checking, your savings, your 401k. And so a lot of that money just gets held up and frozen because no one named a beneficiary. So it's something that people can literally do today without a lawyer, without paying anyone any money, right, to make sure that wealth gets transferred immediately.
Yeah. And I think the wild thing is, with all these bank accounts, they prompt you to do that, right?
All
Like
the
they'll
time, at
say,
least once a year.
name a
Yeah,
beneficiary. You didn't name a beneficiary this year. Name a beneficiary. And I wonder what goes through people's minds when they decide to just not do that.
I'll do it later.
Yeah, I'll do it
Or
later.
I'll do
I got
later.
time.
I don't know. I got time. I don't know who to name. Or my partner will get it anyway, which,
Mhm.
I mean, it's kind of true, but it depends on the state and it
Right,
won't be immediate,
right.
right? Yeah, just, oh, I'll do it later. I don't know who to decide. I don't know who I want to get it. Yeah, we
Wow.
just do it.
Just pushing it off, huh? That's it. Because it doesn't
Pushing
cost
it.
anything. Just,
No, and you can change your mind, is what I tell people
you can
too.
change it.
You can change your mind. It's fine. You can even keep it a secret. I don't recommend that, but
Yeah.
you can keep it to yourself if you want, because if you think you'll change your mind later, right? You don't have to let anyone know, but please don't
Yeah.
leave it blank. I'm gonna probably do some research this summer or work with an intern just to try to quantify the amount of wealth we leave sitting in accounts like that when I haven't found anyone that's done that yet. Um, so I'm trying to get some numbers around what does it mean when you don't do this.
So, and that, I guess that kind of agrees to your point that people don't really talk about death, because you actually just opened my mind up a lot, because I was just thinking like wills and things, were meant to pass down assets. You see what I'm saying? Like, I never thought of it as like passing down family history, passing down like something like our wishes and things. No one ever talks about that. So that's actually new to me. But that kind of makes me really curious on how, your business, I am willing, how you all walk individuals, how y'all guide people through the process, exactly how y'all do that.
So right now I have a worksheet that I start with the three areas, some questions around starting the conversation, some questions around redefining your wealth, thinking about more than just financial assets, and then some questions around naming your beneficiaries, because that really hangs people
Okay.
up. Like, who do I name? Why do I want to split it between my children? That sort of thing. And again, I'm not here to make any legal advice, obviously, and I'm not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but my role, and it's been my role professionally as well in change management, is to coach you so that you can make the decisions yourself with full information, right? So I'm saying, okay, if you split it between your 8 children, do you think that that's going to be meaningful to them, right?
So I mean, like, is this like online? Is this
No, so
um
right now it's not online. People have liked to print these things out so far. This is part of my evolution. So right now it's a one pager that, that people can print out. It's funny. I started in year one with a workshop. So I thought that people would want to engage in a group and kind of go back and forth, right, with these questions. No.
Sensitive. It's sensitive. They're
It's
like, nah, I need
sensitive.
to have a one-on-one.
Exactly, it's sensitive. And then I thought, okay, well, what if it's more of a lecture workshop where like I give you the worksheet and the information, like a course, and you kind of walk yourself through it, but then people weren't, they were listening, but then they weren't following up. They weren't actually doing the work. And this whole time, people kept asking me, well, can you coach me? Like, can I just call you one on one? And I was like, but that's not going to scale, right? I have my business hat on. I'm like, that's not going to scale. Coach a bunch of people. And then I thought, well, let me just give people what they're asking for and see where it goes. So I still don't know. This work might not be about scale right now and being
okay.
effective in that way. I mean, I have big dreams and big visions of how this could scale. But right now, there's such a leap between where people are with this work and where they need to be that I don't know that your typical online course, webinar, workshop, etc. is going to get people there. I think that already exists. I think a lot of that exists and
Yes.
people still aren't doing it. So I'm still trying to figure out what is that thing. The one thing that has become a little clearer to me in the last month that I'll share is that I had one client last winter come to me and want to go through the 3 steps. She already had a will, but she divorced and she wanted some coaching around, like, what should I change? And I realized that she's probably interacted with me personally, because we're in the same community here, me personally, or with I Am Willing, my like email over the course of a year. So probably like a dozen touch points before she was like, "Oh, I just saw your last newsletter. I think I'm ready to talk to you." So this is going to be a long journey, I think, for a lot of people. Another person, a friend, reached out to me because she's pregnant with her husband, and she was like, "Oh, I've been reading your newsletter. Like now I think I'm ready to start the conversation." And she
See,
only had
I
one
think,
conversation. I haven't heard from her. So it's still, I'm still figuring it out. Yeah.
and I think like with anything, people have to be in a position to receive it. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like everybody's not going to be at that point in their life where they're really ready to receive the information that you're giving them.
Yeah.
And we've had to learn that also, with financial literacy, because it seems like, hey, who wouldn't want to learn how to better manage their money, right? We
Yeah.
would think that it would be a given, but everybody's not ready to receive that message. Everyone doesn't have the same values.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. And yeah, it's just not high on everybody's priority list. And that might fit in that same, that might fit in that same realm.
Yeah.
Um, which makes it difficult to get people to receive the message.
Yeah. I think you're totally right. I think what I'm trying to figure out now is part of my business helping people get ready. I don't know. Or am I
You're
only
helping me
focusing to
already,
your
so
point?
I can I
Yeah.
can tell I can tell you that yes, because you help.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear. And I think that's why this year I'm so focused on speaking engagements and podcasts and just like getting the word out because it helps me learn and hear from you all like, oh, this has moved me a little bit, right, on the journey, or this is telling me something something I didn't know. Because the idea of just focusing on people who are ready is why only 30% of people have wills. It's the same people, the same families going through it, passing it down, right? Like it's been 30% for like 50 years. Like why can't we grow that?
Yeah.
Um
It's almost like the thing that has to happen is when it's too late. Right?
yeah.
It has to be that traumatic experience. Wow, this
Yeah.
person just passed away and they didn't have anything set up. Let me go set something up. I mean, you
Yeah.
could have done
That's
it
that's
years
what
ago,
it is
but
for a
it's
lot.
like,
No, I
But
think that's
but
what it is for a lot of people. Yeah.
yeah,
but people have been passing away. Like that. That's
that's what
not
I'm saying.
something that.
But you know,
That's
everybody
not
hasn't
something.
passed away in everyone's life, though. Like Dr. Ruby
Personally.
said, personally, like some people have never experienced like
that,
someone close to them passing away. They still have their mom, their dad, all their aunties are still here, right?
that's
So,
not what I mean. That's not what I
uh,
mean though. I'm
uh,
saying that everyone, I mean not everyone, but people before us have had people pass away, and that number is not getting better. You
oh
see
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Pat, death is not a new thing.
Yeah.
It
yeah.
just started. You see
That's
what I'm
true.
saying? This is yeah, like since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
man.
And I think our lives are only getting more complex. And that's what's
Mm,
interesting. Like for me, it will, and this is just how I am, it makes me more eager to figure out how am I going to pass things on? How am I going to get my Gmail shut off and my Facebook shut down and like my Bitcoin taken care of, right? Like it's just more complicated than it was even 5 years ago, right? 10, 15 years ago. And I'm the kind of person that's like, oh, let me figure it out. But I think for a lot of people, it's overwhelming. They're just like, where do I even start if I have this long list of things? So I
yeah.
get it. Like I feel why it's so hard, which I think is why now I'm like, let's just start with the base. Because here's what I really believe, and lawyers don't at me, but if you have the conversation, if you talk to your partner, your spouse, your parents, your kids, your grandkids, your grandparents about how you want to be celebrated and remembered. I want to have a big party. I need it to be in my home church. Don't have that one lady in the choir sing. Like whatever it is, and you write that down and you communicate it to them, that's a win. If you do nothing else, at least your family is going to be like, Nana wanted to be in the church. She didn't want that one lady she didn't like to sing in the choir. She wanted she wanted these flowers and she wanted to be in this dress. That's huge. That is
I'm
huge. I think we take that for
I'm
granted, but that is huge. How are you thinking about
What
your
you
group?
about to
I'm just,
say?
I'm just imagining me like being in the choir and I'm ready to sing for this person and they be like, "Oh, yeah, they said they don't want you to sing." I'm-
Make
People
sure
are
you
petty like
tell
that. So
Mr. Rowan, who can't sing a lick, tell him he can't sing at my funeral. Okay?
right,
I'm not
right,
having it.
And Deshaun has to be the one to tell the
Right.
choir director, no, I'm sorry. Cornell said he don't want that person singing at his funeral. But you know what?
Oh
You would
man.
have so much confidence to hold up your little letter that you got from Cornell to be like, look, this isn't me. This is what he said he wants. People
Say,
may
"Hey,
not be
bro,
happy
you
about it.
trash. You trash, bro." Like,
Hey, look, it ain't me, bro. It ain't me. Maybe if you was a better singer, he would have let you sing at the funeral.
Or whatever beef y'all had from the choir, right? But like we take for granted that, oh, it has to be this big thing, it has to be this will, it has to be this trust, it has to be notarized. Yes, I want everybody to get there, but if we have to start small, we can start with that conversation, we can start with writing those things down. We can start with making that list of your wealth, capturing all of your wealth, right, for your family, and making a little note. I want this niece to have this, I want this nephew to have this, right? I want these magazines to go to the museum, like whatever, write that down. Hopefully, get to name your beneficiaries. And if you stop there would be so much wealth captured in our community that right now is being lost. There would be such a reduction in trauma and drama, right? With families knowing what they wanted. And again, I want to get a whole other PhD on this. Maybe this is how we used to do it. Maybe there is some oral history or oral legacy that maybe we've lost around families saying, "Oh, I know grandpa wanted this or grandma wanted this or, mom wanted this because we talked about it or wrote it down." But from what I can tell, we've lost that. If it was there, we've lost that. We don't have those conversations right now anymore. So if you don't get to the point of writing a will, I want people to see that what I'm trying to coach them through is still going to make a difference. It's going to make a huge difference in the lives of, the family that you leave behind.
Nice. Nice. All right. So I definitely want to ask this too.
Yeah.
For the people that you do, you know, I don't want to even use the words convince, but the people
Mm.
that decide that they want to begin this
Yeah.
road to legacy planning, what do you notice is some of the biggest mistakes that they make on their journey, right? Like some of the
Oh,
hurdles that they follow, or once they started the process, right? They're in
yeah.
it, and it's like, what mistakes are you seeing? Like, what is your experience with that?
I mean, it's funny because I actually don't see mistakes per se.
Mm,
Because just going through the process, I think allows things to become clear. Okay, so I'll give you an example. This isn't a client that I've heard, but I've sat on a lot of webinars with lawyers, talking about estate planning. And one of the challenges that people have that come from big families is this idea that, oh, I want all my kids to split everything equally,
mm,
right? And that is okay, but it's difficult, right? Because what are the odds that all of your kids are going to agree on what to do with the house, right? And so the lesson
mm.
that I take away, right, or the
Yeah.
or the money or the car, right, whatever, the land, the property, like whatever it is. And what I take away from that is, and I think this is part of my coaching, let's not try to make these decisions from a place of fear or from a place of fear of confrontation, right? Yes, you're not going to be around. So if you're the one that has helped all of your children get along and like come to make decisions together, well, you're not going to be there to help them do that, right? And so choosing, say, your most responsible child to do X, from what I have seen and read and heard, yes, people will be upset, but in the long run, it's more likely that your wishes will be fulfilled.
Yeah.
So again, it's not so much a mistake, it's just helping people feel confident, I think, in the decisions that they're making. Hey, if you want to leave it amongst your 8 children, that's still okay, because to me, that's better than doing nothing.
Yes.
Right.
Definitely.
So I'm not here to kind of judge people's decisions. I even tell people, I don't need to know what's in your bank accounts. I don't need to know the specific assets you have. I'm just here to help you make a decision about what happens to those things. And then if you get to the point of making a will, a lawyer can give you legal advice about the consequences and the tax implications, right? And all of those things around your decision. But the fact that you've made a decision at all, it's huge. I'm here to celebrate that, right? That's a win. That is setting up your family in a way that they weren't set up before. It's progress in my book. So I'm here to get people to that point.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen that a couple times, like in my own family. When my
Yeah,
grandma passed away, and her 8 kids at the time were figuring out what to
yeah,
do, right?
yeah.
Seeing arguing amongst them. I mean, because my grandma, she was born in 1919. It was
Wow.
normal to have like you
Yeah,
know a lot of kids back then. Yeah, it's just looking outside in because this isn't like my argument, right? It's not my battle to fight, but I'm seeing my mom trying to figure everything out with her siblings, right? And yeah, it's not a pleasant conversation. And these are people you grew up with, people that you love, and now you're like going toe to toe because it's like, yeah, um, or people are just upset about the outcome, right?
yeah,
Say let's split all these things evenly, and then they're like, well, I think I did a little bit more, so I should get this much more. Like little things like that.
yeah.
It's just
My mom is going through, well, she's an outsider, but her sister died a year ago. And my mom sat with her when she basically transferred her husband's will to herself. she was pretty much fine with the will that her husband had had, and the culture in Zimbabwe is, deferential, right, to men. So she was like, I'm fine with this. And, so when she died a year ago and they were going through the will, she also had 8 kids, I think. I think 6 of them are still alive. There was, yeah, a lot of tension around, well, she didn't leave me this, and she told me she was going to leave me this. And, and I told my mom, get a lawyer, have the lawyer read the will, and tell them what can and can't be done. You can contest a will, right? There's laws and processes to do that. But what I tell my mom is like, at the end of the day, it's not your fight. Your sister did the right thing. She made a will. She made her decisions about who she wanted to get what, and everyone else has to deal with it. And again, yeah, and again, to me, that's better than nothing. I would rather have you sit in your feelings about what you did or didn't get and have to move on than have you fight for the next 25 years and waste money and go to court. And, to me,
And
that
hold
is more,
grudges. They just
and hold
holding grudges
grudges.
against their
And hold
families.
grudges. Fine. If you want to hold a grudge against a dead person, fine. But, at the end of the day, we just have to accept what they wanted. And I think that's a better place to be in than to not know what they wanted. To me, the not knowing is what creates the most trauma for people, because you just have questions for the rest of your life. Are we doing the right thing? Is this what they wanted? Would they have wanted us to split it up this way? Should we have done this? Should we have done that? It's a ghost. It haunts you forever.
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
so we talked about like how things happen when people are not planning their legacy properly, when they're not planning their will or trust. Are you able to share like a success story of like a client that you've had with I Am Willing
Mhm.
and what that looks like?
Yeah. I'm still pretty new on the coaching, so I don't have a ton of clients yet, but I can share the one that started with me in the winter. So I mentioned she had a will, but she was getting divorced, and she wanted her 2 adult daughters to be more involved, right? Like in the next version of her will. And so I think what was a success story for her was helping her figure out the conversation she wanted to have with her daughter separately. So she's like, I want one daughter to handle like my effects. And she's like, I want my other daughter to handle the finances. But I'm worried, right, that there's going to be, conflict there. And I said, well, can you write letters to them? This is something that I encourage in the process too. So letters accompanying the decisions that you're making, personal letters to your daughters, in addition to having the conversation about, this is why I'm making this decision. But to the point you made earlier, Cornell, when someone dies and you're in the midst of grief, you're not necessarily thinking back to, oh yeah, mom told me 5 years ago that she wanted me to do this for this and this reason,
Mhm.
right? But to pull up that letter and be reminded, oh, mom made this decision and she wants me to do this for her for this reason, could be really powerful, in the moment. And so her just being able to think about the different ways, the different mechanisms that she could kind of access to share her wishes. Again, we get so caught up in the will and the legal document, and this has to be filed. And I'm like, yes, that's a piece of it, but you can make videos for your grandkids now, right? You can make a recording of, yeah, what you want and have that available to your family, when you're gone. We see it in the movies and we think it's like funny and cute, but I'm like, well, why aren't we doing those things? It doesn't have to just all be wrapped up, in the will and the legal document. There's lots of ways to convey that. So I think that was kind of eye-opening for her. Like, oh, they don't just have to rely on this one thing. I can find
Mhm.
other ways to help them understand, the decisions that I'm making and how she wants them to be a part of it.
I would absolutely say that that's a success. And I mean, that's, again, like Cornell said earlier, well, kind of one of the things that I didn't necessarily think wholly about when it comes to legacy planning. I'm just thinking passing down assets, passing down money, making sure that that's getting divided correctly. not even just my wishes, how I want to be celebrated, what I expect for my belongings, how I want that to be handled. So, well, yeah, 100%. Even just having that conversation with her daughters, or starting to have that conversation with her daughters. Yeah, I think it's the first step to a positive experience when you're talking about something like, death. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Um, I think one of the next questions that I did want to ask you, because I feel like you answered most of the questions that
Yes,
we had
yes,
already.
yes, yes. She
You
definitely
answered.
did.
I
You've been
did.
knocking it
Very
out the
thorough.
park. I'm like, I don't think that if I ask you
Very,
something else, you just like I said,
very,
yeah. Well,
very thorough. But yeah, I kind of you kind of alluded to this also when you spoke about the beneficiaries. But what are more things that people could do right now, like some practical,
mm,
applicable
yeah.
steps that they can do right now? You did mention the beneficiaries because that's easy and that doesn't cost any money. They prompt you. You just got to stop ignoring it. But
Mm,
what else can people do?
Yeah. Um, at one point I had like a 5, 6, 7 stage, journey for all of this, but it was kind of moving into really what you need a lawyer's help to do. Um, One thing I think people can do, like I mentioned earlier, is think of these love letters that you might want to leave behind. And, maybe it feels silly now as we're young and, you think, oh, it's too soon for that kind of thing. But you can write them and just put them away. You don't have to, give them to anyone at this point. But I think it's important to kind of capture how you're feeling in the moment. Maybe this is me personally, and not waiting until, until later in life. I think that's one thing that people can do now. I think another thing that people can do now, so there are a lot of platforms available to download a will template. So it's kind of like dipping your toe in it. It's like, okay, maybe you're not ready to go to a lawyer or get it finalized, but just download the template for your state. Just see what's in it. See what the things, things that you need to think about, how it's formatted, um, what you might need to include in it, who needs to sign it, right? That kind of thing, because every state is a little different. Another thing that I would encourage, and I'm not getting any kickbacks from this, but one of my favorite templates out there is called the Five Wishes. And this is a little more advanced or sophisticated. But the first two wishes are your health proxy. So, who is going to speak for you if you can't speak for yourself, if you're sick in a coma, right? Something like that. And the second wish is your health directive. So this is how you want to be treated. Like, do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want transfusions, right? How long do you want to be kept alive if something were to happen to you? Do you want your organs donated? And what I like about it is that it asks these questions in very simple language, and you can do it digitally, you can do it on paper, but you literally just fill it out, answer the questions, you can make notes, you can scratch things out. So it kind of wraps up really neatly these two legal documents, your health directive and your health proxy. But then the last three wishes are really beautiful. So this gets back to a little bit of how do you want to be remembered, but how do you want to be taken care of at the end of your life? So this is, do you want warm baths? Do you want your hair cut, right? For you guys, do you want your hair done? Do you want someone to come in and take care of your beard, right? As a as a black person, I'm like, if you're gonna give me a bath, please put lotion, right? Like, don't leave me ashy if I can't, do that myself. Do you want music? Do you want visitors, right? Do you want family coming in? Do you not want that person from the choir coming to visit you? Do you want, do you want books read? Do you want stories? It just has a really beautiful way of thinking about all these little things that we don't think about. And again, it goes back to what I was saying. If you're not visiting people in hospice or visiting people in the hospital, you really have no idea what goes on in those spaces. I volunteered in high school in a hospice, and my mother was a nurse. And so I have a little bit of proximity to that. But when you can't speak for yourself, I think it's really powerful if your family can pull this out and say, this is how we are going to take care of you at your end of life. Again, I don't know that a lot of people are ready to jump to that level, right? Like that stage of thought. But it's just a really well done booklet um, that I recommend people take a look at. Again, it's not something that you need a lawyer to help you do. The health directive and the health proxy, it'll depend on your state, but most of the time you just need it notarized and a witness. But then the three wishes, um, it's just really lovely. It's a really lovely way to make sure that you're taken care of in a way that you would like, with dignity, and respect at your end of life, at the end of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you see people in nursing homes all the time who knows if this is what they want, right? Or
Yeah,
if it's their choice, or if it's just their situation. You never really know. But that sounds like a good way to just simply explain. Look,
yeah,
if the depends on, I guess, maybe finances could play a part in this, right? When
yeah,
it comes to
exactly. It might.
taking care of people.
Totally, but
Yeah, because
but
that's a lot.
looking at it now, and this would be a much more sophisticated conversation with someone, but looking at it now, if you want to be taken care of in a particular way, then now is the time, as you all know, as
Mhm.
investors, to think about how much is that going to
Some
cost,
Bitcoin, exactly, right?
right? Yeah, how many Bitcoin, right, is that going to cost me? Do I want this in home? Do I want this in a nursing home, hospice, right? Like whatever. Then you can make plans. But if you're not talking about what you want, then, right, how are you going to make plans for it?
All right.
Uh, I, I really feel like the information that you have is going to change a lot of lives. I really respect this journey that you're on. I feel like it's similar to ours, to be honest. Just a different aspect, but at the end of the day, you are improving lives. And yeah, and it's information that we're not taught, because you really have to seek this information.
Mhm.
And I think, the the non not being educated on it, I feel like, is a large part of why a lot of people aren't doing it.
Yeah.
But I'd really love for you to tell people, like, where they can
Yeah.
find you. Like where, like,
Yeah.
IG, do you have like a website? Like, how do we reach you?
So I have IG. It's I am willing underscore US. I've got a website, iamwilling.us. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm actually a little more active on LinkedIn now um, than IG. I mean, hey, if you know a great social media intern, let me know. That stuff is exhausting. But so I find LinkedIn just a little easier for me to use, so I'm there too. I guess a spot that I'll highlight on the website are the resources. So I've written a couple blogs like about You Are Enough, about redefining your wealth and breaking down each of those steps. And I'm still figuring out, ways to point people to the content. On my website, you can sign up for my newsletter, which I get out about once a month. But like you said, I'm really trying to focus on education, and education in a way that encourages and empowers people to just take that first step. Because I find that once people take that first step, there's like this sense of relief, like, oh, okay, it's not as hard or maybe as scary as I thought it was. Maybe I can do the next thing. But getting people there, that's the challenge. So that's what I'm focusing on this year, is getting the word out.
Nice. Dr. Rumbi, this was fantastic. This was
Yeah,
amazing.
I had a lot of fun.
We really appreciate you coming and talking to the people. I like Cornell said, I think this is going to be a phenomenal episode. I think it's going to change lives, literally.
Oh, I hope so.
But before we go, can you just leave the people with just one heavy hitter, one liner, or just something that that they can just walk away with, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, legacy planning is not as scary as you think. It's about sharing your wishes and your wealth. We don't want to leave people with trauma and drama, right? We want to leave people with your wishes and your wealth. And as investors out there, we can't keep talking about generational wealth, building generational wealth, if we're not passing on that wealth. So you've
Mm-hmm.
gotta do the hard work of legacy planning so we can build that generational wealth.
Man,
Where my fireworks?
that ain't go. That ain't.
That's what's
Okay.
up.
where
Hey,
my, where my, do I
Yeah,
not
you
get
can
it?
do
There
that.
it goes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do I have that set up?
You should. There it goes.
Yeah. Oh
Okay.
man, I can do that. That's great.
All right, that was it. That's the mic drop
Um,
right there.
All
good
right.
stuff. But as always, thank you all for supporting. Thank you all for the people that's watching. I hope that she was able to. Well, she did drop gems, and you know it's up to you. It's up to you to pick them up. So yeah, thank y'all
Yep. Thank you. And thank you again, Dr. Ruby. Really appreciate it.
for sure.
My pleasure.
Of course.